live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited, beautiful plains of the internet, and then we can go ahead and get started. We're always waiting on Facebook and Twitter and on Twitch. We're over on Twitch now. Rumble looks like it's alive and well, but let's just double check on YouTube. YouTube makes me press one additional button and it just popped up, so we're going to make sure that that is clicked and appropriate, and then we can go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get into it. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got a lot to get into. There is a lot of news flying around really quickly around these parts, which is kind of all the parts, but we're going to talk about a few different things, bounce around from a couple different areas. Number one, we're going to start off by talking about the Biden border crisis. Yes, it is a big problem. We've been talking a lot about it here on the channel, but there is new imagery, new photographs that were just leaked out from some very upset Border Patrol agents, and we get to peer inside what is actually happening. And so we're going to look at this from two different angles. We're going to look at some of the externalities. What can we see happening in photographs and on video? And then we're going to look inside this. We're going to look through a court document that was filed on Monday that is giving us some pretty gruesome details about what's happening inside these facilities based on sort of the stuff that we don't see. These are reports and allegations that are pretty grueling and heinous. So we're going to go through all of that. Then we're going to change gears and talk about a federal district judge out of Texas, the Northern District of Texas. His name is Reed O'Connor, just came out and issued a new order that is going to be limiting what the Biden administration can do regarding mandates for transgender and abortion type of procedures. So the federal court came out and said, nope, the Biden administration was going to be mandating this. So certain religious hospitals objected and they said, well, we don't want to be mandated to do that type of stuff. And the Biden administration said, that's just too dang bad. You have to do it anyways. Well, a federal judge from the Northern District of Texas, which is a federal court, came out and said not so fast and granted an injunction telling the federal government you can't mandate that for religious hospitals and religious organizations. So we'll talk about that. And then in the last segment, we'll have a little bit more fun with the Fleeing Texas Democrats. They call themselves the Texas House Dems. I call them the Texas COVID missiles because they flew on an airplane landing into the Capitol building just full of COVID. But anyways, they are still sort of meandering about the world, and some of them have come back to Texas, but the House of Representatives in Texas issued arrest warrants for them, 52 of them, in fact, which is a lot of fun. Anytime you're going to go round up an entire party, it's a spectacle to be seen for sure. These are civil arrest warrants. And before anybody starts doing cartwheels about, totalitarian Texans like, we're used to hearing, we want to make sure that we go through and see what's going on here because it is actually kind of hilarious. All right. So a lot to get to. We're going to jump right into it. If you want to be a part of the show, a couple ways you can do that. Number one is by being a supporter over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is the preferred mechanism. And if you support us over there, you can participate in the show by filling out this form. It's kind of like a super chat on YouTube, but you can ask a little bit of a longer question and really take some time to articulate your thoughts. And it's sort of this, I'm going to try to get to most of them. I usually get to all of them. So if you're a supporter, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, that is available to you. Also, over on YouTube now, we are taking super chats. One just came in from Ben Dover, says, lock Dems up. And so that's going to pop up on the screen here in a second, but you'll see what's happening over there. So super chats on YouTube are another great way to support the show. And without any further ado, let's wait for that super chat to pop up because it's going to pop up here. Come on. All right, there it is. There it is from Bend Over. Thank you for that. It says lock the Dems up. So that's how it works. Thank you, Ben, for helping us get that cleared and out of the way so that now we can jump into the news. All right, so this is lunacy. That's something that I've sort of hinted at, but now this is coming from an actual Border Patrol agent referring to the border, saying that there are a lot of problems here. And you recall that for a long time, the Biden administration wasn't even willing to call this thing a crisis. I'm not even sure if they're there yet. They were saying, hey, Jen Psaki over there in the White House, there's a border crisis down there. And she's like, oh, no. It's a little bit of a surge. It's a little bit of an increased activity or whatever language she was using, but they were doing everything that they possibly could to not call it a crisis. So now we're going to go through this and look at it from a different perspective. We've got the White House's take on this. They put Kamala Harris in charge of solving the solution. Joe Biden said she's very smart and capable. Let's see what her tremendous work has been doing for us down here at the southern border. So from Town Hall, they have this exclusive, and they got some very, very troubling photographs. Nothing that I think is, warranting, any discretionary warnings or anything like that. But what you're seeing is a lot of inhumanitarian problems taking place, in my opinion, caused by the change, by the modification of the immigration policy. We'll get into that further. Let's jump off with a headline here from Town Hall. They say that this is lunacy of frustrated Border Patrol agents take pictures of the overcrowded detention facilities. This was posted by Julio Rosas. The Biden administration's handling of the ongoing crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border continues to flounder as the massive influx of people illegally crossing into the U.S. remains at an all-time high, leading to overcrowding at holding facilities, with COVID-19 still being an issue, right? We're seeing this all around the country. You can't, sort of go anywhere without making sure now that, at least in New York City, right, the NYC pass is coming. Got to show your vaccination status. We're seeing vaccine mandates roll out across the country. Very, very high alert. Apparently, this is, something that we're all going to have to live with unless you just come across the southern border. Then they just don't really care. You just kind of come on into the country. We'll get into that. Now, a video taken this week by a source in the Rio Grande Valley Sector shows immigrants holding in a facility tightly packed, with some not wearing masks. You're going to see, you can ask yourself whether the masks matter at all under these conditions, but we'll get there. This has led to Border Patrol having to take people apprehended elsewhere in the sector to the temporary holding site underneath the Anzandulas International Bridge in Mission, Texas, where temperatures outside reach above 100 degrees on a daily basis. And so I want to show you what that looks like. Lots of people. 100 degrees is very hot. If you're not familiar with what that feels like in Arizona, sometimes it gets up to 115. I mean, it's like your skin is boiling off of you. But I want to show you what the scene looks like. This was posted over from Bill over from Fox as new. This is the largest group of migrants we've ever seen being held by Border Patrol under the Anzaldulas Bridge in Mission, Texas. Exactly what Town Hall was talking about. Looks like it could be up to 1,000 people. We can only get a look at the area with our drone. There's a popular Rio Grande crossing area nearby, right? And so you can see what this looks like. There's a bridge. All the cars are going up over top. All of the migrants are just tucked away under the bridge, keeping out of the sun because it is extremely hot, right? They're not out here having a picnic because it's just too dang hot. Never mind the fact that they were incentivized by the Biden administration to pick up their families, pick up their children, run them all across a scalding desert in August when it's extremely hot because of the promise that they're going to be able to come in here and integrate and all of that stuff. And this is in spite of the fact, this is shocking, folks. How is this even possible? How is this a thing, right? Kamala Harris said, don't come. She went down to Guatemala and wagged her finger in their faces. And I don't know if there's any Guatemalans there. Maybe that's a little bit presumptuous of me. Maybe all of the Guatemalans who listen to Kamala, they took heed of her advice, and they're just sitting at home and they're saying, wow, I'm glad we didn't make that journey. But all of the other migrants from all of the other parts of the world apparently didn't get the same memo. And so they are stacking themselves now underneath bridges. And again, on these points, right, I don't have any problems with people wanting to become and be a part of America. I love that idea. These people are escaping, dumpster fires of their home countries for many different reasons. And they want a better life for themselves. And I don't mean to, sort of categorize all of these different countries as being dumpster fires, but many of them are. And that's why people are leaving them in droves to come to this country. And so there are a lot of reasons why that is a problem for the country. If different people are bringing in those same values and ethics and methods of governance into this country, that is a problem. And you can call that xenophobic or whatever you want. That's a whole separate issue. Right now, what we're talking about are people that are trying to improve their lives, that are trying to escape tyranny, that are trying to be a part of the American dream. I love that idea, but we have to do it, as Donald Trump used to say, legally and in a way that doesn't jeopardize the sanctity of our current country. Xenophobic or whatever you want to call that. I think that's the reality. So we saw what's happening here, and many Democrats now are making this a humanitarian thing, right? You see all these people just sort of wandering around, and they're doing a good thing. Kamala Harris and the Democrats and the liberals, they're saving people, and they're very humanitarian, and they're causing this to happen through their boneheaded policies. And so certainly empathize and understand the bleeding heart, certainly understand the good intentions and appreciate all of that. But there are certain things that the country just doesn't simply have the capacity for. And the current administration is seeing that firsthand. Are they going to do anything about it? Well, we're going to see. So who is actually leaking some of this stuff and making some of these claims and educating us about what's happening down there at the border? We have former acting commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. His name is Mark Morgan. He told Town Hall that the Biden administration has been lying to the American people since the start of the border crisis. He says, quote, and listen, he's former acting commissioner of the U.S. Border Patrol, okay? So this is not some random person. He says, quote, early on when they were saying, hey, nothing to see here, everything is under control, they were talking about unaccompanied minors. They left out what was happening with single adults and families conveniently. And I believe, again, they were doing that intentionally to misdirect and lie to the American people. Morgan said, adding that the moving of unaccompanied minors to the Department of Health and Human Services shelters was a shell game because some of those sites have experienced poor conditions due to the rapid setup after the crisis kicked off in February. He said, quote, they are way past capacity. So aliens sit outside because where do you take them? Logistically, it's a nightmare. People want to go to the bathroom. They need to eat. Women need to breastfeed. The list goes on. This has surpassed the point of sustainability. This is lunacy, is what he says. So sort of talking about, the federal government moving people between different agencies. They come through, they're apprehended from Border Patrol. They don't go into a Border Patrol facility because those are full up. And the Biden administration has removed the once effective policy that Donald Trump had, which was remain in Mexico. You're free to come to the border and apply for asylum and make your pitch as to why you need to be admitted into the country. That's fine. You can do that, but you have to stay over there while that happens. Joe Biden came into office, rolled that back, said, no, just come on over first. Then we'll deal with you on the back end. What that created was a floodgate, a lot of incentives for people to just come across as long as they can get 1 foot across that border and be in the United States. A lot of the language that we heard from Joe Biden and Kamala during the election season was that, you're welcome here. Donald Trump's a racist, bigot, xenophobe, and he just is such a monster that we want to empower you to come and be a part of the American dream. A lot of that language. And so people listen to that they heard what she said and what Joe said, and they made the trip, and now they're here. And now, since this administration broke that by creating these perverse incentives that have a lot of unintended consequences, well, they're supposed to fix it. If they're such humanitarians, if they care so much about the poor migration and the plight of the immigrant, well, then why are they allowing these things to happen? Their policies might make everybody in the country feel good. All of the San Francisco liberals are going, yeah, this is great. We should care for those people. Little do they know that their policies are resulting in these problems, which are harming the very people that they feel good about helping. So it's kind of a bizarre circular blind spot that they have, but well, this is what's happening. And what am I talking about? Am I being hyperbolic? No, I'm not. This is the condition that many of these people are in. Now, a lot of their faces are blurred out. This was done by Town Hall, so it's protecting their identity as best we can. There are other people with masks on, but just get a look at the scene here. This is what Kamala Harris is responsible for. This is what the Biden administration is doing. All right, so, a very quick video. We'll play that one more time just so you can get a second look at that. And you can see somebody just kind of went in there, First and foremost, this looks like a prison door, right? I've been to many jails. I've been to many holding facilities. This is exactly what it looks like. Big, thick concrete walls, big, thick glass. It's like a prison. It's basically what it is. I don't know specifically what the intricacies of this facility are, but that's what they all look like, right? Big, disgusting, ugly government building, and they just throw bodies in there. So Kamala down here just laughing away. Let's take a look at this one more time. Okay, so we can take some screenshots and dive in just a little bit just so we can see what these conditions are. Now, you can take a look here, right? These are literally immigrants who are just stacked on top of one another, like actually, right? These people are shoulder to shoulder. This person is laying on whatever that is in the middle of the road. We've got arms and, everybody's on top of one another. We have these two people. This person's not wearing a face mask, but that's okay because she's like 6 inches. Her forehead is touching the woman next to her who does have a mask on, and everybody is spooning because there is literally no place else for the bodies to go. So this is the result of the Biden administration's immigration policy. Haven't seen AOC crying in her white outfit anywhere recently, but of course she did that during the Trump administration when they had some pictures of these space blankets that were being passed around. So of course that's there again, which I think that is the trigger for outrage on the left, and maybe that will cause them to now take issue with some of this, but you can see some water bottles are being handed out. Anyways, people are just stacked on top of one another. Here's another angle, right? Typically there are facilities or something back here behind these little corners, but the room goes back quite a ways. You can see the bodies are stacked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, space blanket, just keeps going on back. And over here we have more arms and legs all sort of, flopping all over each other. And that's just inside the building. Now over in some external holding cells, similar conditions here, right? We have other migrants who are using the fence, the chain link fence as pillows, looks like. And also just sort of being stacked on top of one another. Here you can see a side-by-side compare and contrast lot of people in really, really horrible conditions. Really horrible conditions. It is inhumane. It's offensive. It's not something that should be happening in this country at the hands of our government, right? This is at our government's own hands. They are causing this right now by their own policies. We've got people literally, look at these people, just stacked one after the other. Right. So the country is freaked out about COVID and Delta variant and all that stuff, which is certainly permissible, right, to be concerned about a pandemic going on. But then our own feds, the Border Patrol agents, they just go and they just stack bodies together. No big deal. And apparently that's, I guess, success. I don't know what the White House is doing about it. We're going to take a look at it here in a minute, though. All right. We've got some more story here from the Town Hall article. The Border Patrol agent Morgan says, look at the pictures, which we just did. Says the Border Patrol is fed up and agents are sending out pictures, right? So there's sort of a break in the ranks. The dam is breaking there a little bit. Says Morgan said that the capacity for 2 Border Patrol stations is around 600, but last week they had 10,000, folks, 10,000 exclamation point. He says 8,000 of them were unprocessed, leading to overcrowding, violates almost every single CDC guideline to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, right? We saw the images. It's obvious. He says, where is the mainstream media? Where are the open border advocates that were crying their eyes out in 2019? Where are they now? Well, it's a good question. Well, the parties have changed a little bit. And so now, because a different party's in power, you don't do things to hurt your own team. And so the same people that were out there faking their outrage in 2019 and the years prior to that, that was because the opposition was in charge. Now their person's in charge. And so even though the tragedies, the inhumanity is magnified many times fold, exponentially worse, they are all now quiet. Just kind of hanging out there. Well, Joe's doing his best, and, Joe Biden is having a hard time finding his way into the stinking White House. So he's having a lot of problems here. Now, to be fair, the mainstream media is picking up on this a little bit. They are getting agitated with the Democrats. They know what a disaster this is, and they're starting to raise some flags about this. I saw a headline over on Washington Post. They were also hinting like, hey, Democrats, you're going to get blown out in 2022 unless you get this border situation under control, because many states like Arizona, which went blue allegedly last time, then officially they did last time, then now, If a lot of Arizonans are pretty upset about what's happening at the border, maybe it flips back. Same with some of the other states that were close calls. Everybody's watching what's happening. We were promised a humanitarian solution. They told us what Donald Trump was doing was horrendous and that they were going to fix it. These were the leaders in charge. America was getting back to normal. Finally, we were going to have some common sense solutions that orange maniac wouldn't be on his Twitter account so much, ruining everything. Finally, we're there. Well, Donald Trump's off the internet. Kamala Harris is in charge of the border, already went down to Guatemala and Mexico, and we're still having some pretty serious problems. Not the same problems, dramatically worse problems. And CNN is catching wind of this. They're telling us the same horrific stories that migrant kids now, it's the kids, right? It's all about the children. They describe raw food and extended stays at the Texas temporary facility. So these are unaccompanied migrant children. They're at a temporary facility in Pecos, Texas. They reported poor conditions, including undercooked food, long wait times for medical attention, and prolonged stays, according to court declarations that were filed on Monday. We are going to take a look at those court declarations here next, but let's go through this. The accounts mark the latest set of concerns that are raised by children and their attorneys in these pop-up facilities put in place by Health and Human Services. That was Xavier Becerra. We're going to take a look at him. Last week, HHS Inspector General announced it was launching a review in the troubled Fort Bliss facility, an area where that shelters minors. And here's a quote from a 16-year-old, right? A 16-year-old from El Salvador, unaccompanied migrant child that made the journey up from El Salvador. I don't think that Kamala Harris went down there and wagged their fingers at El Salvador, so maybe they didn't get the memo. But this poor 16-year-old kid, right? A 16-year-old kid, folks. 16. Says here, quote, when we eat meals, the meat and the eggs are sometimes a bit raw. The potatoes are a bit hard. Sometimes I worried about eating the food because I don't want to get sick. I know of 2 kids threw up after eating the food. He also suffers from anxiety attacks, and he's staying at the Pecos site. Yeah, and so that is just a little tidbit of some of the atrocities that are taking place at these sites, caused by our own government, caused by the Biden administration, changing the rules and creating some pretty strong incentives to cause a bunch of people to say, oh, that sounds like a good solution. That sounds like a good thing to do. I wasn't going to go there before because if I would, Donald Trump would have said, you're going to just sit there on the other side of Mexico. We're not letting you in. That changed. Suddenly everybody says, oh, well, sounds like a good idea now. And we're stuck with this. 16-year-olds with runny eggs, undercooked meat, people throwing up all over themselves, 16s. So that's very humanitarian, very nice. Good job, Biden. Good job, Kamala. Borders are well done. This was filed in a court document that hit the docket on Monday. Let's take a look here. Filed in the Central District of California, the Western Division. And you're going to take a note and see that this is Flores versus Merrick Garland. He's the Attorney General of the United States. Filed here by the National Center for Youth Law and the Center for Human Rights and Constitutional Law. Couple filings here. This one is only 2 pages, but it's actually significantly longer than that in the full packet that I got. And what we're talking about are these things called EISs. These are emergency intake sites, and the Biden administration, actually all of the prior administrations, will set these things up. And so we're talking about these emergency sort of pop-up shelters, the emergency intake sites, they call them EISs, that when we have these surges, they pop them up and they process people at a higher bandwidth, at a higher capacity, so that they can get integrated or, whatever's going to end up happening with them. So we're talking about these EISs. And when we go in here, we're going to see that there are horrendous things taking place at these EISs. And they're suing to fix all of this. So what's happening here? We got a second page of this document says that they want a class-wide order, the people filing the lawsuit, that requires the defendants, which is the U.S. government, to cure the breaches of a prior settlement. So in 1997, many, many years ago, there were some standards set in place about how you're supposed to deal with people at these EIS sites. It's been something that's been happening for a long time. These things pop up, and there's a standard that the government has to follow in order to process people through. Well, under the Biden administration, look at this. You can see the table of contents. A lot of problems here. We have the statement of facts says the Fort Bliss and the Pecos EIS, they are inherently unsafe and they are inappropriate placements for children. Why? 5 reasons. Number 1, well, they receive wholly inadequate recreation, no education or little education. Children at Fort Bliss, they live in unsanitary conditions. They lack privacy. Their health has been jeopardized because they have undercooked, insufficient, and inedible food. Sometimes there's inadequate care There are also inadequate protections for children's mental health, especially the vulnerable children. They say that these government facilities, they have no sufficient case management. They don't properly release children. They don't properly transfer them to licensed facilities. They detain hundreds of children for extended periods of time in unlicensed and unregulated EISs, okay? So you're seeing these, right? We've seen these stories where I think out of Texas, there was a bunch of migrants who were just being housed at hotels nearby, local hotels. And there was a COVID outbreak. They all went to a Whataburger or a Burger King or something like that. The police responded. We have a bunch of COVID infected migrants who are very sick. And the Border Patrol just, processing people without any regulation, without any licensing, which we know they're very excited about. They want to regulate and license everything. So why are they breaking their own rules? All right, anyways, it says here that it is not fully utilizing its licensed bed capacity. The prolonged detention violates the settlement. It says it places children in non-secure facilities, does not make prompt and continuous efforts to release them, and so on, right? Doesn't respond to their age, special needs, or anything like that. And then we get a conclusion. So let's take a quick look at a couple specifics because there are some gruesome things happening here. And then we're going to jump into the questions. Here we've got it. It says this is what's happening. We have these emergency intake sites. They're called EISs, where unaccompanied children and unlicensed detention facilities just pop up. They say right now, the use of these is unprecedented. During the past 5, quote, influxes, children that were detained, it could not accommodate them previously. To meet their welfare standards. Now, right now, several EISs have popped up. We've got Fort Bliss and we've got Pecos, and they are failing to provide even minimum safety, care, or conditions. So let's take a look at what these say. We got a couple quick examples, and then it's question time. On July 28th, 2021, Biden team, Government Accountability Project filed a complaint on behalf of several civil servants. According to the complaint, we've got a quote, filth was commonplace. According to one contractor, I've been into one tent one time and I was like, yeah, I'm not going back there. They're filthy. They're dirty. There's food on the floor. There's wet spots all over the place. The beds are dirty. Quote, the Fort Bliss children did not and could not trust that they were safe, that their basic needs would be met, that their sponsorship placement cases were being timely processed. COVID was widespread among children and eventually spread to many employees. In italics, hundreds of children contracted COVID in the overcrowded conditions. Adequate masks were not consistently provided, nor was their use enforced. Every effort was made to downplay the degree of COVID infection at the site, and the size of the outbreak was deliberately kept under wraps. Okay, that is according to a complaint here, filed by the Government Accountability Project. July 28, 2021. It's a COVID explosion going on there. And it's not only that, they are keeping it under wraps. They are downplaying the extent of the problem. Meanwhile, the children are being denied basic human needs, that the government incentivized them to come over here, basically implying that they were going to provide that. They're not doing it. Major depression and depressive episodes were commonplace with the children. Yeah, their lives are basically, the trauma that they're going through here at the hands of Queen Kamala's problem. August 4th, 2021, 33 members of Congress wrote to, quote, express our immense concern and horror at the whistleblower allegations that surfaced over the weekend of sexual misconduct at the Fort Bliss emergency intake site, El Paso, Texas. Audio provided by whistleblowers appear to confirm that adult staff at Fort Bliss had been caught in sexually inappropriate situations with minors in their care, at least as recently as May 2021. And I've been saying this, that this is happening, right? And I've been saying that we can only kind of really see and as a society understand what's happening on our side of the border. Whatever CNN tells us, half the country is going to believe it. And so we just kind of observe what's happening within our own homes and within our own house, meaning the country. And we have sexual inappropriate situations with minors from our own government. When I would be railing about this, I would be saying, well, it's happening by the coyotes. It's happening by the people who are trafficking in these people. Women getting sexually assaulted, women and children getting killed, men getting killed, people getting robbed, raped, and ransacked of everything on the way here. But at least when they get here, they think, well, everything's going to be fine. Joe Biden promised us a better life. Then we cram them into a facility, stack them on top of each other, put them in horrendous conditions, give them undercooked food, and then for some of the children, they get sexually assaulted by people out of Fort Bliss. Well done. Good job there, federal government. After numerous attempts for calling for change over several months, the EIS remains dangerously mismanaged. Not hearing much about that. August 6th, just a couple days ago, 2021, the Refugee and Immigrant Center, which is a contracted legal services provider, reported about this condition children are now experiencing at Pecos. Says, quote, the legal teams have served tens of thousands of children there since 2012, but the reports we have received from both attorneys and clients on the conditions are the worst we've ever observed. They've been working in this facility since 2012, tens of thousands of children, but the worst they've ever seen. Pecos holds almost 1,500 unaccompanied migrant children between the ages of 13 and 17, and the facility is expected to relieve an influx of children as young as 6 years old in the upcoming days. Our legal team has witnessed disturbing conditions that put health and welfare of these children in harm's way, including food-related abdominal pain, undercooked and spoiled food. Children are being kept in cage-like rooms for most of the day. In addition, we've had clients who have not received proper medical attention after breaking bones. Not received proper medical attention after breaking bones, and know of children who have waited weeks in detention before they were able to speak to their attorney and their sponsors. That is what's happening right now at the border. And that is what Kamala Harris was supposed to be down there solving. She said that she was going to go down there and solve global warming and that this was going to solve this problem. But here they are. We have a bunch of innocent migrants who are landing up here on our shores, on our border, promised a better life by these two knuckleheads up in the White House. And they're getting here. They're being served undercooked food. They're vomiting all over themselves. They're being kept in cages, and they are being sexually assaulted. Well done. All right. What do you have to say about that? Let's take a look at some of the questions coming in from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We got a bunch of questions. Cue these up. Let's see who's first in the house. Also saw a super chat coming in. Let's see what that was about. All right. We're going to start here. This is now loaded. Want to know says, who are the 35% that think Kamala is doing a good job on the border? I want names. Border Patrol solution is simple. Texas and Arizona needs to keep them all. They keep letting them in. Us up north don't want your visitors. Well, I guess there's a point to that. But we can't do much about it. The different states. It's the feds. It's their jurisdiction. It's their problem. And they're making it everybody else's problem by their incompetence. Sharon Quidney says, what should be equally, if not more shocking about this horrible humanitarian crisis is the self-imposed gag order on part of the media, all to protect the communist regime, right? Lies and more lies, right? Yeah, I mean, you just saw what I read through. Why is that not the front page of every document? We have our Border Patrol facilities now where there's sexual assaults taking place, unlicensed, unregulated. Border Patrol agents are having meltdowns. They don't want any, they're leaking this stuff. They're saying we're out of options. We don't know what to do. The Biden administration is setting policies in place that are causing the problem. And they're not giving any resources to fix the problem. And so what is the Border Patrol supposed to do? If the incentive continues to remain, people will continue to come. Global warming or gender identity or whatever Joe Biden's giving down there, $10 million for, to prevent gender discrimination or whatever that headline was, okay, we'll see if it works. Hasn't so far. Willie Brown is here, says, Kamala told me not to come, but I couldn't help myself. Oh, we're going to jump right over that. Peely Wally is here, says, hey, Rob, do you think most of America knows about the current border chaos? The mainstream media will be non-existent on the matter, I guess. It's not worth reporting unless it's a case of orange mad bad syndrome. Yeah, probably not the extent of it, right? Probably not what I just read. Do you remember how much media coverage this got last time when it was AOC down there hanging from the chain link fence? Why doesn't she do that again? Because it's not a political benefit to her now. It's not about the humanitarian crisis. It's not about the immigrants. It's about politics. And these people are sick because what they are doing is harming actual people in their political game. It's a sad thing. Sharon Quidney says, so do you think they're all going to end up voting solid Democrat after this? I thought that at one point maybe that was a sure thing. But the further and further the Democrats go away from, more sort of normal centrist Democrat ideology. Like, for example, did you see the TikTok video of that guy or girl or that, don't want to misgender that individual with Jen Psaki on this TikTok, right? What's going on here? Do you think a lot of these communities are going to want to connect with a liberal party like that? I have my doubts about that, right? Many people from many other parts of the world have strong cultures, have strong religions, and they don't identify with a lot of the changes taking place in the Democratic Party. So I'm not sure that the party is going to be the same party that people continue to vote for without thinking twice about. We'll see. We've got Sharon Quidney says, I wonder how the regime will be able to spin this to make it all Trump's doing. Well, we've already seen that. I think that Becerra and Alejandro Mayorkas, who I think is DHS, he came out and said that it was all Trump's fault because Trump removed the infrastructure. If Trump would have been allowing people to migrate more consistently, if they would have been able to just come through whatever, didn't spend any time building the wall and not change the policies, well, then we'd have a more robust infrastructure on the back end. But since he didn't do that, and since they are now going to open up the floodgates, now they're blaming him for not having the infrastructure. And you're saying, well, maybe the infrastructure shouldn't be there because it's a bad policy that can't be managed appropriately, as you are learning right now. So they're going to try to blame Trump, but whatever. We have Sergeant Bob and Miss Lucky are in the house. Great comment. They say, had to cover the photo of Harris with small cardboard. I was afraid you would put on her cackle. Nothing to laugh about. Well, you're right, Sergeant Bob. I didn't put the cackle in here for that reason. There are a lot of, of damages that come from playing that. And I would never want to subject this audience and you and Miss Lucky to anything so painful. So we're going to avoid the Kamala cackle at every opportunity. We're going to do our very best to make sure that never comes out. There may be a moment, though, when it warrants that. When we got to play that thing, I'll do my best to give you a content warning before we bring out whatever that thing is that she does later down the road. I'm glad you and Miss Lucky are doing okay. It was a close call there with the Kamala photo. I know it. Speech Unleashed says the Dems need all the illegals to be in the U.S. so they can vote when the Dems reinstate mandatory mail-in voting because of COVID-19 and the Delta variant. Remember, the Dems want to lower the voting age to 16 or 17 and not require valid ID to vote. It's a good point, Speech Unleashed. And I think you're onto something there. I saw a headline in California that you could print your own ballots. I didn't pay much attention to that. But if that's the way that this is going, if we can just sort of mail in votes and whatever goes, and nobody checks, nobody cares, and it's really difficult to get a voter ID, but vaccine passport, not a real big deal. And if we start to just sort of allow these little things to happen, honestly, I don't know what's left to really battle over. We'll see. We got Peely Wally says, England are having problems with illegal aliens coming over by boat, 1,000 daily at times. These matters need strong, hardline government inputs. They are quite happy to restrict our way of life. So why not come down hard on the aliens' life? Countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and so on, they don't have these issues because they have a hard line drawn in the sand and people know not to test it. Yes, you're right, Peely Wally. Right, rules and disincentives, they work. Surprisingly. And they were working better when Donald Trump said, no, you have to remain in Mexico. That was your policy. Tucker Carlson had a great interview with the president of Hungary, and Hungary experienced something very similar to this, where people were coming across the border, and now what they do is they just take you and just remove you, right? That's it. There's nothing else to really talk about. There aren't many, all these procedural detention, removal, no, you come there, they got you, all right, put you in handcuffs, check your ID, make sure, they know who you are, and you go right back. And so he came out and no, we don't have an illegal immigration problem because they know that if you attempt it, it doesn't work out for you. And that typically works when you draw some pretty clear lines. There will still be people that come, but it will not be surges and hordes of people that are believing in a false promise that doesn't exist. That's going to really cause them damage, if not in their lives. We have next up, Thunder 7 says, it's so depressing, it's beyond hope. I wonder why Biden and the regime are not mandating vaccines for the illegals. I guess that the Delta variants won't infect them, but just like COVID didn't infect BLM. Antifa thugs are rioting. The poor illegals are being used by Biden to get votes for the Dems, but it's horrific what's going on. The kids are being trafficked. Yeah. Right? Yeah, there are hundreds, if not thousands of kids. Unaccompanied migrants kids, children who are being apparently sexually abused. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, I don't understand why this isn't seen as an issue of national security. The administration is literally allowing an invasion of our country. No other first world country has open borders. I sure hope someone could do something to fix things soon. I hear you on that one, Jeremy. We'll see who's going to do anything about it. The Republican Party's asleep at the wheel. We have over here some super chats coming in. Let's make sure we get to some of these. Ben Dover started us off earlier before this segment, said, lock the Dems up. So we'll play that one again. We have another one here from Celia Frostborn, says, to quote MGRR, who protects the weak from the one who protects the weak? Ooh, I like that. Yeah, that's a good question. Here, I don't know. I think it's the populists, right? We elect our politicians to solve these problems. Many people voted for Joe Biden because apparently he was going to fix the border and not be so racist. But here he is. The question is, the question really you sort of ask yourself, when we talk about the immigration crisis, is the total amount of suffering of the migrants, is it more or less now? Are there more migrants suffering more now, or were there prior under Donald Trump? I think the numbers speak for themselves. I think the images speak for themselves. They may feel good about their policy, but more people are suffering, and it's a direct result of them. They should be ashamed of themselves. We have Kareem165 with the super chat says, is diversity really a source of strength like the liberals keep saying? Look at all the problems this is causing. I guess for the government, having unified citizens is bad. Yeah, diversity, right? It's a good question, and that's a very provocative question that we probably can't dive into too deeply here in this time that we have. But it is a good one, right? People will oftentimes point to different European countries and say, look how beautiful everything is over there. They have high taxes and they have a beautiful life. And so why don't we just do what they do and raise everybody's taxes? And you say, well, it's mostly a homogenized society and most things are uniform. And so they've got, oil, they got a whole different system than we do here, right? America's a little bit more complicated because we are integrating people from all over the world. It is a beautiful thing. We have all sorts of benefits from that. And it's always been a melting pot of freedom. People want to come all over here. I think it's probably why we're the most industrious people, stereotypically and accurately, I think, in the world. It's because of some of that. So I think that diversity does give us strength, but I'm not sure what the end goal is for that, right? Like diversity in itself is not a bad thing or a good thing, I would say. But if you're going to just sort of allow open borders in the name of diversity, that's a bad thing. That's not a good thing. So diversity can be good, but if you're going to say, well, we want diversity in this country, so we're just going to open the borders and just let floodgates in of everybody from all over the world, well, that's not the same diversity that we might be talking about by bringing a multifaceted group of people together with different inputs and solving different problems. There are other areas where diversity is terrible. You don't want much diversity on your football team, do you? You want the biggest, the fastest, and the strongest. You don't want somebody who's got, a difference of opinion on, the morphology of the ball or what to call the football. Well, it's pretty offensive to me that it's a football. It seems like it's appendage bigotry there. Why don't we call it a handball? Because you throw it more than you kick it, right? I don't know where these things come from sometimes. All right, we're gonna continue on. Great super chat there from Kareem. We've got a Tager Witziffy says, it's been such a crazy 18 months that who knows what the government will decide. Is there a chance that the government will order homeowners to take in migrants? I don't know. I mean, the answer would normally be no, right? But the CDC just said, well, they might be doing that right now. They might actually be doing that right now. Because the CDC said you can't throw people out who are not paying their rent. Well, I'm sure that somewhere in this country, there are migrants in a house that are not paying their rent. Somewhere. And the CDC said you can't throw them out now, or we're going to charge you with a crime for that. And so they kind of did. They kind of just said, yeah, you have a home. Well, you don't need that home as much as they do, and you can't kick them out. So now their home, your home is now their home. America. That's what the CDC did. Curtis Bartle says, unenjoyment and September 4th. Can't wait to see the snowflakes melt. We'll see. I think they'll probably push that back, right? They push everything back, which is how you know the pandemic is not over. A lot more runway on the pandemic because the student loans have got pushed back till next year. The eviction moratorium has got pushed back to October. We'll see what happens with unemployment. Apparently September 4th. We'll see if that gets pushed back again. We'll see. Kareem with another one says, did you see that video of Kamala stating people in rural areas are not competent enough to photocopy their IDs? Yeah. She said they don't have Kinkos and copiers. I said, because I am a white man in a non-rural area in a city center, I happen to have a copier. So, I don't really know what their plight is. It's hard for me to identify with that. I'm so privileged. And because I work at a law firm, I happen to have a copier. So, it's hard for me to talk about somebody who doesn't have a copier or doesn't know where to get one. It's a tough life, very difficult. I hope they can find them, though, because we need to check IDs in this country before we vote. It's important. All right, great questions from that over. Those were great super chats. Let's see what else is here on Locals. Before we move on into the next segment, Three Girlies is here. Says, where is AOC? Who complained people were drinking out of toilets. She must not be upset about kids eating raw food, getting assaulted, sexually abused, or spreading multiple diseases. I guarantee there is way more than just COVID running through those facilities. Most of the people are not vaccinated like we are here. Some of the diseases could be tuberculosis, polio, cholera, diphtheria, syphilis, and leprosy. Inmates get way better accommodation than these migrants are getting. Isn't it the government's responsibility to take care of these people if they are holding them? Yes, it should. I don't care if they come in illegally. They don't deserve to be treated like this. Yep. They need to be either returned back to their home countries or remain in Mexico. There is way more protection and safety for these people in Mexico than there is in these facilities. It's a great point, Three Girlies, and it's the same thing I was thinking. Are their homes better or worse than that? Than those conditions? Better or worse? Probably better. So they left a good home to come to a worse situation. The border caused some suffering under Trump. It's caused more suffering now under Joe Biden. It's going the wrong direction. Thank you for that. Very nice comment, Three Girlies. Be Brave says, I thought there was almost an immediate turnaround time on releasing everyone. I guess kids might have to wait a few days for their new trafficker to pick them up. Terrible. Sergeant Bob says, if I were you, I would be frothing at the mouth. Sometimes I do, actually. You'll notice I sometimes have to clear some of the froth up because I get frothed, man. These are frothy topics. All right, thank you, Sergeant Bob, for the reminder. We have Democrats want the immigrant slaves. The Democrats, as well as the rhinos, want the southern border open to keep immigrants of slaves. The Democrats encourage the southern border to be open, but they don't want people from Cuba. Well, isn't that interesting? Yeah, it is interesting. I think both parties are in on it. There are benefits to both of them, which is why this problem has never been solved. My whole life, it's been this problem. My whole life. And I've lived in Arizona my whole life. And I know how it goes. Vienticus Prime says, I just want to point out that an Israeli contractor made a bunch of money from the wall. Remind me, which country do both parties like so much again? I didn't know that, but seems to be in sync with other things going on. We have Soul Viking says, and as always, many of the poor kids are being used as props by adult wanting to pose as family units and receive easier entry. Awful and heart-wrenching. Yeah, meaning that these kids might be yanked away from other people and smuggled in here so that they can get in. And then abandoned. That's how they become unaccompanied. It's trafficking in children on our southern border, incentivized by the current White House. Impeach Biden says, I'm so upset, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry to upset you, but we got to talk about these things. Speech Unleashed says there have been news stories showing where foster children are being displaced so that illegal children can live in those foster homes. The government is paying those foster homes to take in the illegal children. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Tweak says Sweden has the most shootings of all in Europe. Don't trust CNN when they tell you what a great system we have here. What's up from Sweden? I didn't mean to talk bad about your country. I don't like to impugn any other countries. I love other countries. I love other systems. I love other cultures, and I love other people. But most of the governments in the world are awful, pretty terrible. So thank you for that. Yeah, we all have our own problems. The U.S. has a lot of them. I'm sure Sweden does as well. Good to see you. That's so cool. From Sweden. All right. So those were great questions. Many of them from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also some very nice super chats that came in from Kareem, Curtis Bartle, Tager Witziffi, as well as Celia Frostburn, Bendover, and others. Quick shout out over on the watchingthewatchers.local chat. Let's see who's chatting away in there. We've got Vienticus Prime. We got Relic Hunter over there. We have Be Brave. Let's see. We got Want to Know. And Farmer's Daughter's in the house as well. Shout out to No Doubt and others. Over on YouTube, shout outs to Lady Zaga in the house. Zulu is in the house. Zorro playing hooky. We've got Danette, Ryan Jackson, and Ronnie Cole chatting away on YouTube. Everybody, thank you so much for your support. Really does mean the world to me. All right, so we're going to move on into the next segment of the day. Let's make sure that we get our bearings straight here. Transgender surgeries. Well, some people have no problem doing those, performing those surgeries. Other people who are surgeons might have a religious objection to that. Somebody who might be a Catholic or a Franciscan who's a subset of Catholicism, they may not want to perform those surgeries. Well, we're going to go through an order and a rule change that the Biden administration put in place that would have mandated that for religious hospitals. Said that, well, you have to do these things because we have new rules prohibiting against gender identity discrimination, against things like pregnancy termination discrimination. And they were mandating that many of these religious medical providers had to comply with these new rules. So there was a back and forth now. We're going to spend some time going through this. This was something that was attached to the Affordable Care Act under Obama. It dealt a little bit of a blow, if you're on the pro side of that issue, by the Trump administration, who said, we're not mandating that for religious organizations. And then when Joe Biden took office, he started to reverse those policies back. And now a federal judge blocked it, said, nope, those mandates are not appropriate. We're going to dig into this. A headline from Yahoo says a federal judge blocks the Biden mandate that would have required hospitals to provide gender transition surgery. So federal judge just came out, enforced and stopped the Biden administration from enforcing a mandate on several religious organizations that would have required them to perform gender transition surgeries or abortions. All right. The guy's name, Judge Reed O'Connor, U.S. District Court, Northern District of Texas, permanently blocked the Biden administration. Now, it's permanently there, but we'll see, right? This could go up to the Court of Appeals. This could be an issue that works its way up to the Supreme Court. So, a lot of these lower level court victories are good, but they also could be fleeting. So keep that in mind. All right. So what's going on here? The plaintiffs, the people who filed the lawsuit, they're a Franciscan Alliance, which is a Catholic hospital system. They operate 12 hospitals in Indiana and Illinois. Other numerous facilities in those states as well. And so the Biden administration, back in April, they moved, you can see here from the National Review, this was posted April 21, 2021. The Biden administration moves to force religious hospitals to uphold the transgender mandate. So we're going to break all of this down, but a quick jumping off point. In 2016, Barry Obama attached a transgender mandate into the Affordable Care Act. Okay, you may know this or not. I did not know that, but there is a transgender mandate in the Affordable Care Act. Framed as a non-discrimination provision, it would require doctors and hospitals to perform sex change surgeries and provide insurance coverage for this controversial clinical practice. Notably, the mandate did not include religious or conscience exemptions. Given that most doctors receive some Medicare and Medicaid funding, legal experts warned that the mandate would have universal application. And so the way that this is working, remember how this structure sort of works. So we have Barack Obama is in charge. The Affordable Care Act is passed. In that bill, there's a transgender mandate. This goes out. It says, listen, if you're a hospital and you provide medical services, you can't discriminate against anybody because this is a health care act, an Affordable Care Act. And so now we're talking about, medical provisions and what Medicare reimbursements look like and Medicaid funding looks like. And you've got all of these different insurance providers and all of these different doctors who are a part of these insurance plans, provide services for. Okay, so the ACA Act comes out and says, we're going to take control over most of this stuff here. We're the federal government. We can do it better than you people. And they didn't. So they took over the whole thing and they introduced this new mandate. No discrimination. So if you're a hospital and you're getting some of that Medicaid money, you're getting some of that Medicare money, which they all are. This is how the federal government uses the power of the purse to make regulations that otherwise they wouldn't have the power to mandate. Okay, so here, for example, is it possible for the Biden administration or for the Obama administration to go to a specific doctor and tell that doctor, you have to specifically perform this surgery? Like, probably not. That would be sort of a compelled thing, right? That would never happen. So the federal government, what they do is they just incentivize you strongly. They say, we're going to give you all this money and you got to do what we say if you want to keep getting the money. And so now you have doctors and surgeons and hospitals and medical providers who want to provide services to senior citizens and people who are in Medicare and Medicaid programs, but and they want to continue in these governmental relationships, these contractual relationships. But now the government is saying, well, yeah, if you still want that money, you can't discriminate against transgender people. You have to perform those sex change surgeries. You can't discriminate against people who want to terminate their pregnancies because these are the new strings attached to the government cheese. If you want that money, you got to do what we ask for. So now this case has been kicked around for some time. Biden imposed it. In 2016, this went into effect. As is usually the case, when Congress passes something new and it makes its way into law, the executive branch will then pass regulations about how that law is to be interpreted and enforced. So now Barack Obama passes this thing. We have a new law that's on the books, and they say this is how we're going to enforce it. Well, all well and good, except the whole political world got blown up when Donald Trump unexpectedly, surprisingly won the presidency. He moves into office and he says, oh, well, you know that law that exists there? We're going to start whittling that thing down. And they did a pretty good job of that. They got rid of the individual mandate, or essentially reduced the penalty down to zero. And we saw a lot of that unravel a little bit, including one of the enforcement mechanisms of the transgender mandate. Said, well, that was Obama's thing. I know it's part of the law, but we're just not going to enforce it here. We're the executive branch. We're not going to enforce it. So then Donald Trump now unexpectedly loses. He's gone. Joe Biden comes back in, and this new mandate is now something that they want to enforce again. So now this becomes an issue again. So with that background, let's take a look at what is happening here. Who is the judge? This is Judge Reed O'Connor. He was nominated by President George Bush, serves on the Northern District of Texas. U.S. Senate confirmed him November 16, 2007, and he's been on there since. Widely described as conservative, become a, quote, go-to favorite for conservative judges and conservative judicial activists, tends to rule reliably against Democratic policies. So out in Texas, he's 56 years old, went to the University of Houston Southern College of Law, and we're going to go through his opinion. So let's see what's going on here. Now, it's 23 pages. We're not going to read through it entirely. I'm going to cut out some highlights, and we're going to talk about this in the context of really two legal concepts. So first and foremost, we've got the Franciscan Alliance, right? This is the Catholic hospital group. They are suing Xavier Becerra, the Secretary of U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. You've heard his name a lot. The CDC is the organization that is underneath HHS. Now, HHS is now sort of stepping in, and they're getting involved in these sites. They're also joined by the American Civil Liberties Union. ACLU is joining there as interveners. So they're going to join. They saw that the hospitals were suing the government. They said, we want to join in on this thing on behalf of the government, I believe. Let's see here what we got going on here. So this is Reed O'Connor signed off on this, and he's going to tell us that 5 years ago, as part of the ACA Act, the Affordable Care Act, promulgated a rule requiring medical providers to perform and ensure abortions and gender transition procedures, or they got to face penalties for unlawful discrimination on the basis of termination of pregnancy. Okay, so new rule, you have to perform abortions. New rule, you have to perform procedures for gender transition procedures, or else you face penalties. How about that? So there are already legal challenges that were working their way through the courts. Catholic Hospital Association and a Christian Healthcare Professional Association objected to performing abortions, objected to performing gender transition procedures. They view them as harmful. Along with several states, the plaintiffs, the Christians, sued HHS, and they wanted to enjoin this. They wanted to stop the implementation of these rules. And so that all happened earlier, right? Back when Obama was in charge. So lawsuits had already been well underway right then. But then Donald Trump took over. and the rules weren't really being enforced. And so a lot of these lawsuits just kind of were on hold a little bit, right? We talk about mootness and ripeness and whether there's any actual cause of action there. Donald Trump sort of comes in. We're not enforcing that anyways. So you don't have to sue. You don't have to sue for that, Catholic Church. We're not doing that anyways. You don't have to perform those things. So then we have a little bit of pause here. Joe Biden comes in, boom, new order right away. So in 2021, we have a shifting landscape. What's happening now? Caused the Fifth Circuit panel, they remanded the case back to a lower court for further consideration. So now all of these changes are happening. The Fifth Circuit sends this back down to the court, and they said, listen, on appeal, we know that you wanted an injunction. We're talking about substantial threats and irreparable harm. The government now says the case is moot, and the providers never asked the court for any of these things. So the Fifth Circuit Court is telling the district court you should consider these issues and go through it. So we're going to do that now. We're going to run through this and see what the court is talking about. So here we've got the Fifth Circuit said that the President Biden, that his executive order is now prompting this. What does their new guidelines say? It said it issued guidance documentation that it would now interpret Section 1557, which is the gender discrimination thing, to prohibit gender identity discrimination. This is the notification of their enforcement. The court ordered a supplemental briefing about what this should look like. And the government now, the court in this paragraph is saying that this is now ripe to hear. Okay, so that's a little bit of background now. We know what's going on. The court is going to analyze this according to two sort of broad legal concepts. It's actually a pretty interesting opinion, but we're just going to talk about two specific things. Number one, which is something called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It's the idea that what's happening here to the Christian hospitals or to any of the conscientious or conscience or the religious objections, any people that are going to be objecting to that, if they are penalized, that is infringing upon their right to practice their religion. They have a right under the First Amendment, under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, to practice their religion. And if the federal government comes down and puts their finger on the scale of one of those things, you have a Christian, I don't want to do a gender identity transition, or a doctor, I don't want to perform an abortion, I'm a Christian, I don't want to do that. The federal government saying, that's too bad, you have to. It's part of the Affordable Care Act. Sorry, go do it. The question is, how are we balancing these things out? On the one hand, we've got religious freedom. On the other hand, we've got whatever the government says is important on any particular day. And we got to balance those things out. So we've got that. We're going to go through that. It's sort of a balance of the equities. And then we also need to take a look at what they want to be done, which is the injunction. They don't want this back and forth to go on. It went from Obama to Trump. Now it's back to Biden. So the Catholic hospitals, they said, well, do we have to do these things or not? In 2016, you said we did. Then Trump came in and said we didn't. Now Biden says we have to do it again. So we need an answer, and we want an injunction. We want to make sure that this can never be enforced, ever. That's what they're asking for. They're saying the basis for their request is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. We have a right to practice our religion freely. And in order to do that, we need an injunction. We need the court to stop this back and forth, this changing of the guard, and just say that this is a violation of our religious freedom. So let's see what the court does with that. Now, we're going to start off by going through the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. You can see that is labeled here RFRA. They're saying that if you're going to make a claim under this act for religious freedom, you can obtain appropriate relief against the government. You can. And then we have to ask ourselves whether an injunction is appropriate. And they say it begins and ends with success on the merits. Okay, so what Congress has said of the RFRA, they want to properly balance between religious liberty, this is the balancing test that we're talking about, and the government interests, so that the balance of the equities and the balance of the harms favor protecting the moving party's burdened rights. Okay, what does that mean? It's complicated there a little bit, but we've got these balances of religious liberty and governmental interests. In this situation, what is the government going to be saying? Well, we want to, as a government, we've got an obligation to protect transgender rights. We want to make sure that there are no discriminatory practices in our healthcare system because discrimination is bad. We're the government. We want to make sure that the playing field is even across the board. And now that includes transgender surgeries. So you might be a surgeon and you may disagree with that, but the government interest is so compelling that you just say, okay, well, whatever, I'm just going to do that. Because the government has said you can't choose not to do those things. Now, the government is weighed against, they're competing against the religious liberty components. The idea that religion is a cherished right in this country. It's a fundamental right. It's already been defined as that by the Supreme Court. It's in the First Amendment. It's a very important concept for many reasons that we don't need to get into here. But you're weighing these two things. And when you are doing this analysis, Congress has said, the court is pointing out that you have to favor the party that has their rights being burdened. In this case, that's going to be the Catholic hospitals. Whose rights are being burdened here? The moving party. The Catholic Church is saying, listen, you passed this law, it's burdening our rights to perform the surgeries that we want to in compliance with our religious doctrine. So when we balance those things out, we got to look at it in the light most favorable to the religious organizations. All right, so that is under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So now the court is going to balance that for us. They're going to tell us this is how we are doing that balancing act. Here they say the success on the merits is all but conceded. No party disputes that the current regulation threatens to burden the Christians' religious exercise. Same way that the 2016 scheme did. It's the same thing. Namely, it places a substantial pressure on the Christian plaintiffs in the form of fines and civil liability to perform and provide insurance coverage for gender transition procedures and abortions. If they don't do it, they get fines, they get civil liabilities. Who knows where that goes? Maybe they lose their license. Like before, the current scheme continues to fall short of the, quote, more focused inquiry. The government asserts no harm in granting specific exemptions. And I want to point on that. I want to pause on that. So what they're saying here is the government apparently will grant specific exemptions. So maybe this is saying that. So yes, it says here, the government asserts no harm in granting specific exemptions. So I think what they're arguing here is they're already recognizing that requiring this is burdensome. That's why they're granting a specific exemption. They know it's problematic. They know it is infringing on that right. That's why they're granting it. So the plaintiffs now are saying, well, and the judge is saying, well, you already know it's troublesome. So if you're going to grant it for them, then you should be granting it essentially for everybody. Accordingly, for these reasons, and those laid out in greater detail, the court holds that the Christian plaintiffs have shown success on the merits for this claim. Now we go over to injunctions. For irreparable injury, the mere possibility of injury is not enough. They must demonstrate that irreparable injury is likely in the absence of an injunction. So here, under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, if a plaintiff demonstrates a violation, even for minimal periods of time, that unquestionably constitutes irreparable injury. Okay, so even if minimal, any little bit, that's enough. So here, the Christian plaintiffs say, well, yeah, this is an irreparable harm. If you're going to make us do this stuff, that's not okay. The court concludes that the enforcement of the interpretation forces the Christians to place civil penalties to perform those surgeries. This is clearly an irreparable injury. If they have to do that, it's going to seriously harm them. It's going to expose them to penalties. When the Religious Freedom Restoration Act is clear and the threat of irreparable harm is present, a permanent injunction exempting the Christian plaintiffs from that religioning burden conduct is appropriate. As you can see here, the court finds the permanent injunction factors weigh in favor of granting an injunction. The court concludes that the plaintiffs are entitled to an exemption. And you see the whole conclusion here. The court grants the plaintiff the request, permanently enjoins Secretary Becerra, their divisions, and other officers from interpreting that provision in the way that they do now for current and future members. And you see the list goes on and on. Don't have to provide anything for gender transition procedures nor abortions. And it's ordered on this day, August 9th, August 2021, by Reed O'Connor. Whew. All right, that was a lot of reading. That was some heavy lifting in that lawsuit. Let's see if anybody's still alive out there. Let's see what's going on. Questions from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. See what everybody wants to chime in on this one. We have here, Want to Know says, need to mention your like button. You usually don't. 3 unsatisfied customers. to 192 likes. Want to know says, smash that like buttons, folks. Apparently we got some like disparity going on out there. I'd appreciate a thumbs up if you don't mind real quickly. We have Pato says, hey Robert, sorry if this is off topic, but I'm wondering at some point if a mandate, if you're going to talk about the mandate and the legality up here in Washington state, it's getting crazy up here. Yeah, Pato, I will. There's so much COVID news going on right now. It's actually hard to keep track of it all. I was going to go through it today. I got super backed up today, but we do need a revisit of the COVID stuff. All the mandates, all of the different changes. We'll see. We have we'll get to it. We have I'm Not Gas says, sorry I'm late, squat day. I went hypoglycemic mid-set. Oh my goodness, that's not good. Whoa, that's not good. Hopefully you're okay. Don't know if you're joking about that, but that's not good. You might not be joking about that because there's an LOL there. LOL, sometimes it means joking and sometimes it means like, for real, that actually happened. LOL. It's like, wow. So hopefully you're okay. I'm not gassed, but you're typing, so that means you're good, more or less. All right, we've got another one from Sergeant Bob says, when I was a sergeant at the People's Republic of Portland, I worked with a newly promoted sergeant who transitioned from male to female. I found this person extremely competent and great to work with. I learned that this person was promoted to a couple ranks higher after I retired. The person deserved it. I base my opinion of fact and performance. Having said that, there is a prohibition of government interfering with religion. People wanting this type of surgery have other options. Leave religion alone, although many Dems do not seem to respect religion. Yeah, it's sort of one of those things that they consider to be like a vestige of a bygone era. It's for the unsophisticated folks of us out there who still like to talk to our higher power and find a lot of power there. With our higher power. Yeah. Want to know says, can we do a compromise and just do a removal? That would be meeting halfway. That's from Want to Know. Thank you, Want to Know. We have over here, let me turn that off. Over here, we've got, next up is Speech Unleashed says, transgender surgery sounds like an elective surgery. How can the government force hospitals and doctors, especially religious-based ones, to perform these elective surgeries? Part of the problem is they're not really forcing them, right? They are creating systems where there's a lot of incentives for them to comply with the government mandates. So one example would be, the example that I regularly use here is sort of the interstate system and the freeway speed limits and things like that, right? If you want that federal government transportation department money in your state, well, you're going to set the speed limits in your state to whatever the Federal Highway National Safety Traffic Administration standards are. If you want that money, you're free to just put whatever speed limits you want anywhere, but you may not get that same money. So the government can't come in there and tell you what to do with your roads individually, but they can strongly incentivize you to comply with them by giving you a bunch of money. You have to pay your taxes either way. You're funding them. If you want some of that back, you'll comply with their rules. And so that's how they do these things. And so that's where that Medicare, Medicaid procedure comes into play, right? These hospitals are providing health services to all sorts of senior citizens and all sorts of people in those programs. And so now if they have to, if they want to be in those programs, they have to violate their religion to do that. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act provides some protections. Fortunately, this judge came back down and said, yeah, one is more important than the other. There are other doctors out there and other solutions for these things. Good question. Ghost Gunner says, why do they want to cram all this stuff together? Transgender and other LGBTQ4K plus ideas. I love that. LGBTQ4 plus ideas and pro-abortion down everyone's throat. Yeah. LGBTQ4K plus, super fragilistic, expialidocious, prime. We've got all of them, right? Why do they want to do it? It's attempting to destroy the nuclear family. If you want to practice this kind of stuff, whatever, just leave the rest of us out of it. That's from Ghost Gunner. I really agree. I'd like to be left out of a lot of things that are taking place in our government. You're right on a mark. Not a doctor says, can I volunteer to perform these surgeries when it doesn't want to? Rob, I need a tight release for liability if something goes wrong. That sounds awful. Whoever that was. Yeah, that's bad visual. To me, this is from Tremendous, says, to me, it doesn't make fiscal sense to require every hospital to perform gender transition surgeries. I would think it would take a specialist to perform them. So each hospital needs to have someone on staff who can perform it. Sure, there are all kinds of costs to be prepared for the surgery. I just don't think there's enough of demand for these surgeries to require every hospital to be able to perform them, right? I would agree with that. I work in a hospital system. Each hospital has certain specialties. Some have pregnancy services, others don't. Some have mental health services, others don't. If you go to one of the smaller hospitals for trauma, they stabilize you and then they might, life flight you to a trauma center. Hospitals can't afford to offer all services. I thought Obamacare was about lowering costs. Yeah, but that's just something that they told you to make you feel good, right? It's really more about the multifaceted trend towards equity and non-discrimination, and that's what most of these things are about. All right, next up, we've got Vienticus Prime says, I take the same stance as anything else in this issue. You are performing a government function and receiving government funding. If the answer is yes, stuff your religious freedom. If the answer is no, then you do you. Yeah, so that's an interesting component there. A lot of government money out there. I'm also curious, Vienticus, then, would you support that even if you're paying those taxes into those government entities, right? So the government is going to be taking your money anyways. So would that, like in this situation, could these religious hospitals just decide, okay, we don't want your money. We're also not going to give you our money. How about that? How's that for fair? You want us to take your patients? We're not going to take your patients either. How about that? And we just start saying there's some pretty hard lines here. And yeah, they're free to not pay their taxes because they're not getting any benefits as a benefit here. They're providing medical services, so the government can mandate whatever they want. They keep their money. I'm okay with that solution. All right, we have over here, we've got Daniel Williams is here. What's up, Dan? Says the RFRA is a super valuable piece of state legislature and legislature, and applications that the courts will take if this day goes to the Supreme Court will likely be something similar to the recent Catholic adoption case, which shouldn't have been ruled on so narrowly. Also an interesting case because most people don't know the value of the medicine for health reasons beyond transgender transition for things like hormone blockers. These medicines have super valuable application to individuals who are intolerant of their own testosterone or estrogen. I know someone with this problem. They just have a problem with the transition and rejection solely on religious grounds, and it only makes the case more powerful with the RFRA. Ultimately, though, the Supreme Court has also not been favorable towards the RFRA legislation. That's from Daniel Williams. That's some good background there on the RFA there, Daniel Williams. And thank you for that insight and that education. I studied the RFRA in law school during my constitutional law classes, and then I did a quick refresher on that, but there's some good info there. Thank you for sharing that. We have Jeremy Matrita in here says, Rob, thank God, literally, for federal judges who are willing to uphold the law and protect constitutionally protected rights. This kind of situation has happened before, will likely happen again. People need to remain vigilant and rise up to protect their rights when they are infringed upon. Yeah, that's right, Jeremy. I think you're absolutely right. There is a lot at stake in these times, and more people speaking out, more people standing up, more people adding a little bit of that friction anytime some bureaucrat or some tyrant wants to come in here and start to sort of water away some of your rights. A little bit of friction goes a long way. We have Aircraft Mech 123 says, speaking of the highway analogy, weren't or aren't abortions encouraged for donors as well? It's a good question. For donors. I don't know. I don't know what kind of donors those are. Aircraft Mech. I apologize. Send me another question if there's some clarification on that. Hyper Patriot says, we have seen hospitals all over this country that lied on death certificates, the cause of death regarding the new pandemic, so they get dollars. COVID has corrupted many institutions. That's from Hyper Patriot. I was a little bit, skeptical on that one, hesitant to read that one because of the medical misinformation policy here on YouTube. But yes, I think your main point is taken, right? I don't know about any of that stuff or whether that's accurate, but follow the CDC. But the point here, I think Hyper Patriot is well taken, that many of our institutions that we used to trust, things like the CDC, things like the federal government for many people, things like the NIH, the NIAID, all of these institutions that many of us thought, including the FBI, including the Capitol Hill Police and Metro PD, that they were pretty resilient, pretty stand up, pretty solid. Not so much the case anymore. The CDC has no idea what the hell they're doing. They change their guidance, multiple times a month from what it feels like. All right, we have Davis says, how exactly does the federal government even have the authority to mandate that doctors perform a surgery that didn't even exist not too long ago? How can the government penalize you for not learning proficiency at a specific skill? Well, that's sort of what they're trying to protect against. If this would have been successful and every single hospital now had to be sort of staffed up to perform these procedures, lest they be considered discriminatory, then you would absolutely find a situation just like we saw with the baker, right? We saw, I think it was a homosexual couple, or whatever the proper term for that is now, is they went into a bakery, bake us a cake, we're getting married, I'm religious, I don't want to bake you a cake, lawsuits for the end of the world, right? So something like that would have happened here. Somebody would have gone to a religious hospital, said, hey, I want to transition. They would have said, we don't have the staff for that. They would have filed a lawsuit. You're discriminating against me. And they would have probably won damages if this law would be allowed to stay. Because if they're getting that government cheese, they've got to perform all the procedures that the government mandates they do. This is your federal government mandating healthcare in action. 3 Girly says, it's always been beyond me why someone would want a service from someone who didn't want to provide that service. Why would a transgender person want a surgery from a surgeon that didn't want to perform the surgery? Seems like a trust issue to me. Yeah, it's a good point. Because who knows what happens there, right? And if you're a surgeon and you don't want to do it, yeah, it's a mess. The ruling was the right ruling. We have Vienticus Prime says, in response to your question, yes, I also think it's prudent to point out that even yes. So Vienticus was going back to my thought, if they don't get that government money, they also don't have to pay the government taxes. He says, I also think that it is prudent to point out, even counting my previous comment, that situations like these, and in certain cases are, the politicians picking winners and losers in the market. All that being said, it is also on the onus of the people to play their part in choosing their winners and their losers. Yeah, it's an astute observation there, Vienticus Prime. I think that you're right onto something there. All right, and let's see. We have Lava Java Lava with the super chat. 2 super chats came in. Said, are the symptoms of a ricin attack the same as COVID-19? I have no idea. I don't know what the symptoms of a ricin attack are, but it's an interesting question. Don't know. We have another one from Brody Z. Says, welcome to 1984. Big Brother likes obedience. Yeah. You know, in that opinion, I think it was that opinion, he actually referenced a footnote from, I think it might have been from Animal Farm. I can't remember what it is now. But yes, it was one of the dystopian novels that the judge actually referenced in there, saying, yeah, this is crazy. And I think those were the super chats. Thank you for all of those. Shout outs over on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. The Soul Viking, Relic Hunter, I'm Not Gas, and Want to Know. Over on YouTube, we've got Lava Java Lava chiming in, says, within the new 2,700 page infrastructure bill, is there a donation to the Gain of Function project? That just popped up there. Probably not a donation to that project specifically, but we already know that the NIAID, the NIH, Dr. Fauci, EcoHealth Alliance, Dr. Daszak, Bat Lady, Dr. Shi, well, many of them were sort of involved in some very peculiar transactions. Rand Paul went after Dr. Fauci in that in front of Congress and got a little bit squirrely over there. So I'm not sure that they would be so brave as to put it in there as a gain of function project, but I get your point. And thank you for that, Lava Java Lava. Great questions, great comments. And thank you for all of your support once again at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. All right. So for our final segment of the show, we got to talk about these Democrats again. I'm getting pretty tired of these Democrats, but this is kind of fun. The Texas House Dems, as they call themselves, or the Fleeing House Democrats, or the COVID missiles that flew into the Capitol building and infected all of Capitol Hill with COVID. The Democrats, you know, the same Democrats that we've already seen the pictures of them in their RV, on their private planes, with their Miller Lite and other festivities taking place in this big political spectacle. They left Texas because they didn't want to do their jobs voting on voting bills, and they decided that they were going to turn this into a show. Picked up, went over to Capitol Hill, and that's a problem because in Texas, if you're a part of the government, you're expected to do some of the governing. And if you leave, there are repercussions for that. And so we're going to go through what's happening here out of Texas. The Speaker of the House, Dade Phelan, signs 52 arrest warrants for all of the fleeing COVID Democrats. They're absent. He wants to end the chamber's weeks-long stalemate. So they fled some time ago. And on Tuesday evening, Texas House Speaker Dade signed civil arrest warrants for those that are still missing from the state capitol, wanted to regain a quorum and begin moving legislation forward. The move was confirmed by the spokesperson, Enrique Marquez, said the warrants are going to be delivered to the House Sergeant at Arms tomorrow morning, and we've got some video footage of that. So the House Sergeant of Arms actually walked around and started delivering these warrants to different House members in Texas, and we're going to show you what that looks like. The warrants were reported first by the Dallas Morning News. Democrats who may be arrested would not face criminal charges or fines and would only be brought to the House chamber. You can see that here. Dozens of minority members fled to D.C. during the first special session because they wanted to block a GOP voting restriction bill. All right, so let's take a look at the warrant. We're going to take a look at the procedure. The Supreme Court came out and they sort of so there was a district court that said, nope, these warrants are invalid. Then the Supreme Court came out and said they are valid. And so there's a lot of back and forth here. I want to show you what the warrant itself looks like. This one was signed off on for Vicky Goodwin, one of the COVID Dems, says this is a warrant from the state of Texas House of Representatives, says to the Sergeant at Arms of the House or any officer appointed by him, you are hereby commanded to take the Honorable Vicky Goodwin, a member of the House of Representatives of Texas, who is now absent from the House, wherever said member may be found in the state, into your custody and safekeeping, and bring said member before the bar of the House instanter. This writ being issued under a duly adopted order of the House pursuant to Article 3, Section 10 of the Texas Constitution, made in exercise of its lawful powers to compel attendance of absent members in the manner provided under the House Rules of Procedure. Herein fail not, but make due return of this herefore to this House. Witness my official signature, dated the Speaker of the House, doubly signed by Chief Clerk of the House of Representatives, and ready to go out. So you see, it's basically saying, well, yeah, they're not here. We've got rules. We've got the permission to do this under Article 3, Section 10. Go get them. They're elected members. We are in session. They're not here. Go get them. So signed off on the warrants. 52 warrants were representing all but 15 Democrats. There were at least 11 present on Tuesday. So we've got a lot of missing Dems, don't we? No additional new Democrats on the floor Tuesday after 4 returns, so some of them are coming back, and drew the wrath of some Democratic colleagues in Washington that they returned, prompted a renewed push inside the party to hold the line. People are breaking, they're coming back, and the Democrats still upset about it. Earlier on Tuesday, the House voted overwhelmingly to authorize law enforcement to track them down. The 80-12 vote came hours after the Texas Supreme Court ordered that they could be detained. I'm going to show you what that order looks like here in a second. In a statement after the warrants were signed Tuesday evening, Rep. Turner of Grand Prairie, who is the chair of the House Democratic Caucus, said, quote, fully within our rights as legislators to break quorum to protect our constituents, said that they are committed to fighting with everything we have against the Republicans' attack on our freedom to vote. Very upset about it. So, they don't want things like voter ID, which Kamala said is very difficult for rural people in Texas. And there's a lot of rural people in Texas. So, yeah, they're upset about that. Now, the various courts, because this happened, because the Democrats left, they abandoned their job post. They went to an entirely different part of this country so that they didn't have to do their jobs. They didn't want any trouble to befall them. So they went to court and they tried to stop this. Scott Braddock over on Twitter said, breaking out of Houston, a Harris County judge orders that this representative, Gene Wu, is protected from any attempts to compel him to be present. This order came out of Harris County, Texas, said that after examining the writ, the court finds no legal cause to restrain Gene Wu. The court finds that the imprisonment cannot be lawfully prolonged. Therefore, the court orders that Gene Wu shall be discharged from any attempt to compel his appearance. And they want to notify the Texas Attorney General of the discharge, right? So this is coming within the District Court of Texas, going up to the Attorney General. So we'll see what happens there. This is another case. We saw a lot of these same names on the lawsuit from Attorney Washington, who drafted his lawsuit. I think that was with a crayon over there. Greg Abbott over here is the defendant, and there's a temporary restraining order. A different judge out of Travis County said that this was permissible. Said on this date, blah, blah, blah. We've got these different orders. The court finds that it clearly appears from the facts set forth that the defendants have erroneously interpreted Texas law, meaning that Governor Abbott and Dade Phelan, they can't detain, they can't confine, they can't restrict members of the Texas House of Representatives for any of that stuff. And so they said, oh no, that's not allowed. So your warrants and all of those things, no, you can't do that. But then the Texas Supreme Court came out and they said, oh, yeah, you can. No problem at all. So recall what happened. Previously, there was a temporary restraining order issued. So this judge came out and said, yeah, those warrants that you want to go and execute, you're not allowed to do that. And he put a stay on that you cannot enforce these arrest warrants. So that injunction was granted, a temporary restraining order. But then Texas, the Supreme Court, as you can see here, came out August 10th and they said, oh yeah, well, since you now filed a motion to stop the stay, you're attempting to stop the stay that would have prohibited you from making the arrests. You want relief here? Granted. And the stay order is issued. So they're going to be staying the lower court limitation. This is it. This is basically all we get here. Just a couple sentences. They come out and say, we know a lower court said you can't make those arrests. Guess what? We say you can make those arrests. So we're going to put a stay on the lower level ruling. Just put that on hold for a minute. And the Democrats, you can respond by 4 p.m. August 12th, which will be tomorrow, right? So Thursday at 4 p.m. The petition for review remains pending. The Texas Supreme Court did halt that. And let's see what else we have. Okay, so they are now, some of them are back. So this guy is back home. We have James Tallarico is back home. He says, I'm home. Our quorum session break shined the national spotlight on Texas, on the voter suppression bill, pushed Congress closer to passing this stuff. I'm confident they will. Now I'm back to clean up Greg Abbott's latest mess, right? So he's back in session. Looks very happy, very excited. All right. So now, I don't know if he got an arrest warrant delivered to him, but somebody did. This person here, I raised the volume on this. Let's make sure that it's not too loud. He came in and he's now delivering these warrants around the Texas legislature.
Sergeants, the House doesn't have a quorum today. Has placed a call on the House. As a part of the call, the House has ordered me to send for all absentees whose attendance is not excused for the purpose of securing and maintaining their attendance under warrant of civil arrest if necessary. As of this morning, Representative Juarez has now voluntarily appeared in the House chamber and the Speaker has signed a warrant for the representative's civil arrest. Is the representative here in the office today? Okay, thank you. I'm leaving a copy of the civil arrest warrant here for the representative. If you hear from them, would you please let them know we need them on the floor. They can call the sergeant's office and ask for me if they have any questions.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
All right. So he just went and delivered it. I don't know if you could hear it, but he said, is the representative here? And they said no. Okay. Well, just let them know that a warrant has been delivered. If you see him, would you pass that along? Here is another attempt to go and deliver these warrants to another person.
Under the warrant of civil arrest if necessary. As of this morning, Representative Thompson has not voluntarily appeared in the House chamber and the Speaker has signed a warrant for the representative's civil arrest. Is the representative here in the office today?
No, she's not.
No, she's not.
Okay, thank you. I'm leaving a copy of the civil arrest warrant here for the representative. If you hear from them, would you please let them know we need them on the floor? Then call the sergeant's office and ask me if they have any questions. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the memo. I guess we'll just deliver that out. Now, do any of the Democrats actually care about this? Well, here's another one from Representative Alex Dominguez. Says the Republicans just issued an arrest warrant for me this morning. Why? Because I broke quorum to stop their flagrant voter suppression efforts. I would do it all again to protect the freedom to vote. So he's sort of, making a mockery of it. Yep, he got a warrant for your arrest and he's out of there, right? Probably going to be hailed as a hero by certain segments of his party. And another gentleman by the name of Rep. Eddie Rodriguez is extremely aggressive. He's not coming back. There's no way he's going back, says. The Speaker issued this warrant for my arrest last night. Arresting me is the only way they will get me back in that house. We're in good trouble, necessary trouble. Hashtag Texas Ledge. So Eddie Rodriguez also got a warrant issued for him. The only way that he's going back there is an arrest, which I'm looking forward to. I hope that we can live stream when that happens, because that will be fun. Now, I don't think it's going to get to that point, but the whole thing's kind of a spectacle. Let's see what's going on. Some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We got a couple queued up here. Says, oh yeah, so Aircraft Mech was clearing up something on the last question. They were campaigning for abortions to harvest organs. Oh gosh, what a question. So that one was on the last segment. We were talking about a federal judge stopping the mandates from the Biden administration to perform abortions and transgender surgeries. It was a juicy segment, so if you missed that, go check that out. Next up, we have Sergeant Bob here. Says, the novel concept is to hold politicians accountable. Yeah, it's weird, right? Amazing. We'll see if anything actually happens from that. We got Vienticus Prime says, oh, I hope these darned Dems get locked up, with fake enthusiasm. Now all we got to do is lock up the malcontents from the other big air quotes team. Are any of these people going to serve any real jail time? No. Hey, has Assange been released from prison yet? How about what happened to Chelsea Manning? No. Yeah, so it's a political show, right? The whole thing's a political show. I don't think that anybody's going to get any real jail time or anything like that. It's a political spectacle. Both sides are playing it. You know, it's just more politicking. I really sort of don't have a lot of patience for it. I would rather see our elected officials do meaningful things rather than, sort of spend, I don't know how many hours and months of oversight time on Cuomo for butt touching rather than focusing on the murder of senior citizens, right? Why do we spend time with these nonsense topics? Because it works, right? People get enthusiastic about it. It's politics. It's something that's been happening for a long time. And so we can just play spectator on these things and have a little bit of fun, poking fun at both sides. If the Republicans got on an airplane and left, say you're idiots, just like I would to the Democrat. It's a stupid political show. I don't like it. I don't like when they do that because there are a lot of things at stake here. And we're trying to run a country. We're trying to have a civil society here. Stupid show things that we see regularly, like Pete Buttigieg faking riding a bike or any of these morons with their fake masking, right? It's all show. And I have no patience for it. We have Robert Las Vegas says, Texas Dems, how do they sue for conspiracy? What they are doing is clear collusion and conspiracy. It's a good point, right? They are colluding. And there is a conspiracy. Aircraft Mech says, these arrest warrants, while cute, are a big waste of resources. Yeah, it really shows how much doesn't get done with our money. This reminds me of the teachers in my area going on strike. Turns out they were doing this during a scheduled break. The government political arena seems like one horrible SNL skit. It is. It's bad. And it's not. It's just as bad as SNL is now. Nothing is really funny at all, is it? Good comment there, Aircraft. A few more. We've got No Doubt says, the right to compel them to attend is part of the Texas Constitution, makes it very clear. They can compel them to attend. So that judge was violating the Constitution, and the Texas Supreme Court was correct. Well, I'm glad they set the record straight. Thank you for that, No Doubt. And over here, we've got Thunder 7 says, I don't care if nothing more happens. Just to read and hear the Democrats had arrest warrants issued on them made my day. I will listen to this anytime I need cheering up. That's from Thunder 7. Yeah, it's sort of like the opposite of what happened with the Democrats, right? They were very happy that Donald Trump got impeached, even though he wasn't removed from office. Twice they tried. Wasn't removed either time. And so, but they sort of rest assured, okay, at least we impeached him. And so it's a little bit of a victory, right? We kind of take those where you can get them. And it would be fun if, anytime politicians are arrested, it doesn't really matter what the basis is. It doesn't happen often. So you got to celebrate that no matter what side it is, right? If Cuomo gets arrested or charged with crimes, like I don't think is going to happen, but if he did, wow. An actual politician facing criminal repercussion charges. I mean, when's the last time that happened? Rod Blagojevich? 2 decades ago? How long ago was that? Right? It just doesn't happen frequently. On a big scale, you get the lower level politicians that aren't big enough yet. Once you get big enough, then now you are immune. You become part of the ruling class and you get to look down your nose at the rest of us little people. We have over here from Want to Know says, why do you need a copier to vote? In Oregon, you just need to write an ID or driver's number. On a ballot, Oregon hasn't voted Republican since Reagan. Then mail-in happened next year. Democrats won since then. Yeah, Want to Know. I don't know why you need a photocopier. I think it was to get your voter registration, according to Kamala. Who knows? Jeremy Matrida says, people tend to forget when you swear into certain positions within the government, if you are AWOL, absent without leave, the government can physically retrieve you. Most people are honorable enough to not abandon their post or their constituents, but for those who forget, the government will remind you of what you agreed to be subjected to. Next time, read the fine print before you decide to run away from your duties. Yeah, that happens frequently in criminal law too, right? Judges will say, hey, you've got court here, be here. If you're not, there are going to be repercussions for you, and they will come also, like you put it, remind you of your obligations, and it doesn't work out well. But you're absolutely right. They made a commitment to go and vote. They got to go and vote. We have I'm Not Gas says, I did actually go hypo, just a little post-squat puke and then ate some food. Feeling really good now, though. I'm glad you're all right, I'm Not Gas. If you missed that, I'm Not Gas went hypoglycemic while he was squatting, little post-squat puke. It's all right. You know, it happens. Ate some food, right? Everything kind of, it's okay. It happens. Happens to everybody, even the best of us. Glad you're all right, though. We have Speech Unleashed says, I find it ironic that they think they are protecting the right to vote by trying to avoid a bill that actually protects the right to vote. The right to vote included the right to not have legal votes be diluted by illegal votes. Yeah, you're right about that. You know, a lot of these voting provisions are very, very basic, pretty standard. Some of these changes that are being proposed, it's pretty common sense. Most of the country agrees with it. The Democrats know that it doesn't serve them politically, so they're going to throw their little temper tantrums for the foreseeable future. They're going to do it indefinitely. Aircraft Mech says, I've never been given a warrant. Usually a failure to appear in a simple infraction draws notice to warrant. Yeah. So sounds like maybe a failure to appear in a notice draws notice to the warrant. So I see what you're saying. So in some systems, there isn't that little check, right? In some courts of law, what will happen, you miss a court date, they say, oh, you got a failure to appear, or they'll call it what's called an order to show cause. You missed your court date, you better be here on the next one. Otherwise, we're going to issue a warrant. Sometimes that just doesn't happen that way, especially here in Arizona. There's a court, well, they don't even give you a warning. If you're not there at your pretrial conference, well, that's okay. There's now a warrant for you, and the judge will enter it that day, and it will go on record that day. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I don't know. I don't practice law in Texas, so I'm not sure what the mechanisms are there. But the point is the point that they got warrants issued for them, which is just, a lot of fun. Anytime a politician gets anything like that, it's fun. We've got Want to Know says, an Arizona senator got arrested. I think going to prison. Just a little cheese then. So Want to Know is right. There was an Arizona senator who, some very serious charges involving children. Exploitation of young children. Very horrendous stuff. I read a little bit through some of that. I often don't talk about Arizona politics. Some people sort of wonder why that might be. Part of the reason is because we have an entire law firm here. And, it's sort of, I got to be extra cognizant about some of the things I talk about. So we're just a little bit, the national stories are just a little bit safer. And so that's why we talk about some of the national stories. We are still running a law firm here, right? I stream on YouTube, but we have a law firm, we have clients, and those are our highest priority to make sure that nothing bad happens there, because I comment on a story in Arizona that I don't know some of the intended consequences are. And so we're just a little bit safer. I kind of just stay away from some of the Arizona stuff, which has been a bummer because there's a lot of stuff going on in Arizona. My goodness, with the audits and things. We'll save some of that for locals. I'm working on other projects for some of the voting stuff, but I appreciate you bringing that up. You're right. It's a big story. It's a national story. It is a awful story. And so hopefully there is some justice done there. A couple super chats just came in. Let's see here. We've got, all right, we have one here from Brody Z. Says, representatives think they can enforce the laws and be above them just the same. Revoke their self-imposed status, vote them out. It's the American way. Love that. Yeah. I think they will, right? They're all going to face serious repercussions at the ballot box. We had a super chat with no question from Phil. Thanks, Phil. Phil Hoffman. Appreciate that, Phil. We had another one from Lava Java Lava. I think we got that one. The 2,700-page infrastructure bill. We caught that one. Thank you for that, Lava Java. Beth Coddington here chiming in says, hey, Robert, I'll have to watch the replay, but what I've seen is interesting. Quite the chat over on locals. Oh, my God. Is it? So Part of the locals' problem with their chat, which I need to talk to them about, is that it doesn't update in real time with me like YouTube does. So if I'm not on the screen, I can't really see it scrolling like I can on YouTube. So I'm going to have to take a look at that. All right. So yeah, that's what's happening on locals, folks. It's spicy stuff over there. All right. And K Bean came in and said, Rob, you're the best. Well, K Bean, that's how I feel about you. I mean it. I really do. I think you're the best. I think you all are the best. I have a ton of fun spending this short time that we have together every day together. Really does mean the world to me. All right. So Locals is saying, what's wrong with the Locals chat? What was spicy over there? Huh? From Beth. Okay, so we're going to have to investigate a little bit more. Speaking of all that, if you want to be a part of the show, well, then you can do so by signing up at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Let's give some shout outs to some people who just joined up. Big welcome over here to Shifty Schiff is now in the house, which is a fun name. Shifty Schiff signed up. It reminds me of Little Adam, S-word that Donald Trump tweeted about, Little Adam Schiff over there in California. 503 Unlimited is in the house, chiming in from Portland over there. Big welcomes to Mary B. We got the Real Patriot who signed up very recently. Laura SB's in the house, along with D. Rodrigue 188. Wendy Deer signed up, along with Stoic RD. And of course, thank you to everybody else who signed up in the week prior. If you want to join us, it's $5 a month, $50 annually. You get to save 2 months if you want to support us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I really do appreciate it. Almost every time I get off with this live stream, YouTube has demonetized the stream, which is super frustrating because by the time I apply for the remonetization, I say, no, we didn't break any rules here. We follow the rules. By the time they reapprove it for monetization, it's almost time for the next show. And by that time it's time for the next show, people don't want to watch the old show. So then it gets remonetized, but I'm already moving on to the next show, and the next show also gets demonetized. I'm like, it's frustrating. So my point is, your support at watchingthewatchers.locals.com really does mean the world to me. And I want to invite you to join us there if you're already over there. On Saturday, August 28th, 2021, we're going to be having a monthly Locals meetup. We've done this several months in a row. It's a lot of fun. We get to connect with each other, put names to faces, sort of check in with different people from different parts of the world, and just it's a lot of fun. So I'd love it if you joined us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I saw a couple other super chats. I think Zulu sent one in, says, Zulu super chatted, says, you are one increment better than the best. Think about it. I'm going to have to think about that, Zulu. That's probably going to be one of those things that pops into my head at 3 o'clock in the morning tonight. So I'm not sure what to do with that, but I'm going to dig into that. Thank you for the support and for the super chat. And that, my friends, is it for the day. Quick shout outs over on Locals. My chat is moving again. Relic Hunters there. V Anticus Prime. We've got Want to Know over on YouTube. Brody Z, Weeby, Lynn Job. Super chats came in today. Thank you so much for those. Zulu, K Bean. We got George Torres, who's subscribed. Brody Z, Lava Java Lava. We've got another Brody Z there. We have Kareem165, Curtis Bartle, Tager Witziffy, and Celia Frostborn, and many others. Man, a lot of super chats today. Thank you for all of those, including Bend Over. I really appreciate all of that. Now that, my friends, is it for me for the day. And so I want to thank you so much for being here, being a part of the program. We are going to be back here same time, same place tomorrow. It's at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain. Farmer's Daughter's in the house. We have 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And I'll see you back then. Everybody, have a tremendous evening. That one Florida man, have a tremendous evening as well. Lava Java Leva says, don't let Zulu get to you. He's actually a great guy. Our final super chat of the day. I happen to love Zulu. Zulu's been around with us for a long time. I appreciate all of the fun that is taking place in all of the different chats. You all really make this an enjoyable and a great time. So thank you so much for being a part of it. I will see you all right back here, same place, same time tomorrow. Have a great night, my friends. Bye-bye.